Alright guys, here we got a G56, so we're going to be taking them apart. First off, we're going to remove this guy. Should come out fairly easy. Sometimes just use a rubber hammer. There we go. Remove the bolts here. We're not going to remove all of them. We're just going to leave 4 of them in, one on each corner. That way it'll hold it together while we flip it up and remove the last couple. Now we're just going to flip the transmission up. So here we go. We're going to remove those 4 bolts we left in. Remove these 2 5th and 6th gear pivot pins. And now what we're going to do is we're going to pry up on the transmission. Now, let's see if I can get this in view. There's a nice little doodad right here at the top of the bell housing. You can't see him. Anyway, that you can hit on at the very top and very bottom of the bell housing. Now what we can do then is we're going to take 2 larger screwdrivers, one for either side, pry him in right there. We're just going to put pressure on him going in, tap him up until he slides in. And then we're going to do the back, same to the back. And the dowels are right here. You can see that. The dowel is right here and then one on the opposite side. So we're going to do that right next to the dowels. There we are. Now we're just going to pry both sides evenly, get off the dowels, and then there we are. So we can now lift. There we go. Next we're just going to remove the input shaft, and there you can see that little baffle majigger. Anywho, okay, now we're going to take the 5th gear shift fork here. You probably can't see it. There's not much lighting, so not as much as there should be. There's just a little notch he fits in, so you just rotate him that way and then up and out. One thing that would have been a good thing to do would have been to put a zip tie around all these shift rails just before taking the front case off. Not a real huge big advantage of that, but it just helps hold everything together in the right order. We're going to do that now. Okay, now what we're going to do, put this guy around. We're going to remove this bolt here holding in the reverse gear idler. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take that little bolt that came out of the reverse gear switch. It's just an M6 little bolt. It's the same one holding the front bearing retainer in on the front. It's just any M6 bolt. We're just going to thread it into the end of the reverse gear idler shaft. A couple turns, all you need. Now, sometimes he can be a stinker. Hopefully he's not this time. And what we're just going to do is we're going to take it and grab it up. Really easy, like that. There you can see the reverse gear idler in there along with all our carnage. What we're going to do is we're going to push him to the corner of the transmission. That way he's out of the way of the counter shaft, which is going to come out next. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to put this guy around. Like I say, the reverse gear idler is out of the way. So what we're going to do is we're just going to push on the main shaft just to get it to flex outward a little bit. Just enough to get that bearing race past the main shaft there. It may take a little finagling. There we go. The reverse gear idler here. It just slides right out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to lift this whole assembly from the transmission rear housing here and put it into the hole here. When you lift, you don't want to lift on the top shift collar because he will just come right off. You can lift on the under here, but you don't want to lift on the collar. So we're just going to lift like so and put him in there. There you have it, main shaft out of the rear housing. And there's the shift rails here. These, just pull them off, straight off like so. First things first, we got to remove this snap ring. That guy can be a little bit of a pain. Okay, got the snap ring off. What we're going to do now is we're going to remove the shift collar in order to get at that bearing a little better, be able to pull it off. So we're going to remove the shift collar. You're just going to put your palms down here and lift on the shift collar. Like so. And just slowly lift up. Slowly release the tension on the screw there. One shot at one place. Yeah, we got a couple pieces fell, but they didn't shoot all over the place, so that's awesome. Okay, here we got the 3 shifty tents along with the 3 springs. Sometimes you can get the bearing off with like a 3 leg puller. The problem is you can only pull on the bearing the cage here, and so you can't put much torque on that before you screw it up. If you don't care about the bearing, you want to replace it anyway, then you can, if you screw it up, you just cut the cage off, and then there's a nice lip to grab. I might have that. No, I don't. But there's a nice lip to grab, and you can then, with maybe a little heat, you can typically get it off with one of these pullers. Otherwise, you can put a gear puller underneath here and pull it off like that, which is what we're about to do. And we're just going to suck this guy down evenly, all 4 corners. Just like even amount of torque on all of them. Yep, it's going. And there he is. Now, if we just lift the puller like so, the whole thing comes off. Remove these studs out of the puller. And here we have the 4th and 5th gear hub, pocket bearing, and 6th gear. I say 4th, 5th. I mean 5th and 6th. 5th and 6th synchronizer assembly. Okay, and here is 6th gear. He slides right off. There is a bearing underneath him. So now there's a snap ring right there. We got to remove that. I'm using this because the snap ring pliers broke the other day, so I gotta fix them. Just a little tip broke off. Huh. Yeah. This guy isn't so bad. You can't really see, can you? There we go. Okay, we got the snap ring off, so ideally we'd be able to pull this washer off now and just pull the whole assembly off. However, that's not the case because it's pressed on, so it wants to be a little more of a stinker than that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set up the puller again. We've got this plate here, which is on meshed with fourth gear. And you've got the synchronizer in the center, and you got this hub here. You're going to want to lift underneath or between this plate and that synchronizer. There's about an 1/8 inch gap. You want to slide the puller in there and pull it out. On the other transmissions I've done, this has never been an issue, but because the gear hub thingamajigger exploded on this one, apparently that causes issues. So what we're going to do now is we've got these screwdrivers in there wedging the two apart. So we're going to that separates one side. We're just going to lightly tap this in just to help keep them separated. There we are. Like I say, I never had this issue before, but apparently things blowing up causes issues. Put the nuts on. Now we don't need to go super crazy with the torque here. Just enough. We're just using the puller to suck it together. We don't want to go too crazy because when we're pulling, there's the tabs of this brass synchronizer. That's what we're pulling against. Right now what I'm doing is I'm tightening it up to be able to get these guys in there because it's blown up, so it's not wanting to let it in. So I'm just kind of separating it by tightening these up. Once you can see those little tabs in there, once I touch the tabs, I'll stop. Pretty close. I don't need that much contact. I think that's good like so. He's good. I mean that's hardly hand tight. I can tighten it up more by hand. Again, when you're tightening up, like I say, I'm having to wedge my puller in because it's exploded and it's wanting to shove it up. You shouldn't have to really tighten it up at all. There's the brass tabs in there because the synchronizer is slightly different than 5th and 6th. So there's brass tabs in there that you're. Let me see if I can get you a close up of that. There, you can see the brass tabs. You can kind of see the black shiny steel. That's my puller. That's the very edge of my puller. Those shiny dots are, well, my puller. That tab there, it's right next to. It's not quite touching. It's about 1 millimeter in there. That brass tab is the synchronizer. So you don't want to. I mean, you can touch it. It's not like a critical surface where if it has a scratch, it's no good anymore. But you don't want to bend it, or you want to avoid touching it because obviously you're going to be pulling on it and pulling on the puller, and that causes issues if you mangle it or whatnot. So we're good there. Now we're just going to tighten these guys up evenly. It shouldn't take much torque to pop this washer off. You could probably do it with a couple pry bars if you had something to pry against. Probably get it with the main stud here. Yeah, there we go. Easy peasy, just like that. Hardly more than seated. he should be completely independent. Move our stuff out again, and up and out he goes. Okay, now there's a snap ring there. Another snap ring, goodness gracious. I'm not sure how many more snap rings I can do. Okay, here's the synchronizer assembly. This guy's in good shape. Here's the collar here. And then this hub here is splined to the shaft, and we have to remove this snap ring in order to get him out. Like that. Put that in a box of parts. Ow. He sometimes comes off fairly reasonably. Oh, there's the rest of our... Goodness gracious. Anywho, so then we're just going to pull third gear off. Got this here. This is the second gear. Now in order to get this one off, got to flip the shaft over. Another snap ring. Okay, now this guy. I guess what we're going to do now is we're going to go between the two gears here with our puller. Interruptions. Anyhow, so we got the majigger on there. He's all good. Now we're gonna put the top piece on. What I forgot about is I broke my last one. It was kind of limpy. So what I did is I just took it's actually a mower blade. It holds the mower blade on. It's just there's nothing special about it. Any 5/8 bolt would work. Just as long as it has the head, and you just drill a little indentation there so that your puller stays centered. And then that, because this guy here is 5/8, so my 5/8 bolt would just go all the way down and it would screw up the threads. So that guy's to prevent that. Anywho. And here is the reverse gear assembly. Pretty simple there. And here is the reverse gear bearing. Remember how we did it with the, what is that, fourth gear? We got it between, we're going to put the puller between those two, right where the screwdriver goes here. We're going to put the puller in this gap. It's about 1/8 inch gap. That's where we're going to put the puller, and he will pull this, he'll pull both this washer here off as well as this race. This race here is not part of the transmission. It pulls off the transmission. So it's going to pull both of those off. Once again, we're going to install our puller. So what we're going to do again is just clear the forward, pull the whole assembly off. And we've got the thrust washer and the race here. See those. Ran out of storage space again. Here we go. So we got these parts here. We need to replace them. So now there's a snap ring. Okay, found them. Oh, so we got bigger. And that's what the doctor called for. Got him off. Some over there. All the snap rings are fairly obvious which one goes where, so put them in the same thing. Now we just lift up on this. This whole hub here comes off. Sometimes it can be a stinker, so you can pull them off. You have to pull them off, or use a rubber hammer. But this one's being pretty decent, like so. And then second gear comes off like that. You can see this guy just pops off here, like so, and then gives you second gear bearing. And there you have it. That is an empty main shaft. One last thing really quick, because we're just going to show how to remove the bearing races out of the front of the transmission. Because you need to do that in order to adjust the shimming. Here's a little doodad I made really quick. It's pretty simple. It's just got a nut here with these tongs welded on, and then I just got lips over here that grab the outside of the bearing, or the inside I guess, the bearing. And then by tightening up this guy here, you spread them out. So we're just going to put him in like so. And of course we got this guy here that once we got it all tight, we just pull him up. So we're just going to hold him in place. Do it with this hand so you can kind of see the work in action. I'm just gonna, it's telling me I'm low on battery, so I'm trying to hurry up and do this one race before. And both races are the same as far as the procedure, so I don't really see the need to do both of them. Hope that's okay. Something like that. He's in there pretty good. Now we just take this nut here. And we got the guy pretty well centered. And we're just going to pop him out. And this is also the same for front and back race. I think we're on him pretty good down there. And there he goes, I think. And there comes the race. Sometimes the race is pretty loose and sometimes it's not. This one, it was pretty average. And there we are. Out comes the race. And then you can get the bearings underneath it, which are currently being sandwiched by the puller. There you go. That's the bearing underneath the race, the bearing race shim underneath it, and that's how you shim the transmission, is by adjusting the shimmage on those. And there you go. And the front one's the same. In order for me to do it, I'd have to swap out this guy here. I'd put a wider one in, so I'm not all the way up here. I'm down here again in my wedge, and it's kind of like getting late here, so I'm just gonna call that quits. Hopefully that was informative enough. Take care.